So hello everyone. It's really nice to be here and to share some of the information on Croatian leave policies and Croatian leave policy design. So I will follow the usual structure, and I will first say something about the design. So I will say something about the main features of the leave policy design in Croatia. Of course, I will speak about the general things, and then after in the question sections, we can go more into the details. So if we look the structure of the parenting leave policy in Croatia, we have, if you look early childhood, we have three main types of leave. It's maternity, parental, and paternity leave. And here I also added namings in Croatian language, where you can see that with maternity leave and with parental leave, we have three different names. This is basically the same right, but we call it differently depending on the eligible population. So basically the first name, it's always for parents in the labor market, like employed and self-employed parents. But then when it comes to the second and the third, here come the other groups of parents, which are either unemployed, either students or farmers, etc. With paternity leave, we don't have these distinctions, which means basically that paternity leave is only for employed and self-employed fathers. Here we don't have universal entitlement. So basically those who are out of the labor market, they cannot have the right to paternity leave. And of course, we have also other types of leaves, but these are those I'm not going to go into details today, but we have adoption leave, foster parents leave, breastfeeding leave, bereavement leave, career break, career carers leave, etc. We have very different variants, like shorter variants and long-term variants. So we have quite a dense network of different leaves in this country. And then when it comes to those basic three, I will talk today about. So basically the first one is maternity leave, and if we look into the length, we can see it's basically 1 month before the birth. It can start even a bit earlier if there is medical indication. And then this post-birth period, it's 6 months. So basically the maternity leave, if we look into prenatal, postnatal, it's 7 months. But if it's postnatal, it's 6 months. It's quite long. If we look from the comparative perspective, it is paid at 100% of previous earnings. There is no ceiling, and the minimum level is around 500 euros at the moment per month. Mothers have to take 98 days. Out of that, 70 are post-birth dates. And after that, since day 71, leave is transferable. Maternity leave is transferable, and it can be transferred to the father with the written consent of the mother. And it can be used full-time or part-time. Then paternity leave, it's 20 working days at the moment. If there is the family, there is the situation of the multiple births in the family, it is 30 days. It is also paid 100% of earnings with no ceiling, and it can be used until the child turns 6 months. So basically in the same period as maternity leave is lasting. So both parents would be at leave on the same time. And then we have parental leave. We have actually two variants. One is for the first and the second child in the family, and this is 4 months per parent. So basically 8 months altogether for dual earner family. And 2 of those months are non-transferable. So basically if only one parent uses parental leave, it is 6 months and not 8 months. So 2 months are quota months. If there are twins or multiple births, or if the leave is used in the case of the birth of the third child and every subsequent child in the family, it is 50 months per parent. So it's basically altogether 30 months for dual earners, but if only one parent is on leave, then it's 28 months of parental leave. And this leave can be used flexibly. It can be used until the child turns 8, and at the moment, parents can be on leave at the same time. That was not so in previous periods, but now the legislation is like that since the last changes. And basically, if you look into this entitlement here, all employed and self-employed parents are eligible. So the leave time is not conditioned. So if you are in this status, you have the right to leave. But there is a difference when it comes to the benefit. So basically, if you want to have the full benefit, basically 100% of your previous earnings, and as you can see here, I forgot to tell with parental leave, there is an upper ceiling of 3,000 euros, which is close to two average salaries. So if you want to have this full benefit, you have to have at least 6 months of continual insurance or 9 months of insurance with interruptions in 24 months before the leave starts. And basically the benefit level it's calculated based on the average earnings in the last 6 months. So if you have breaks in career in the last 6 months, your benefit may be a bit different than if you would be working continuously in the last 6 months. And then when it comes to other parents, as I said previously, we have also citizenship variant. So basically we have variant for people who are not employed or self-employed. So basically for those parents, they don't have the right to this prenatal period of 28 days, but they have the right, the length is the same in postnatal period. So basically they can start using leave at the day of birth, and that can continue 1 year or 14 months or 30 months. It depends on how many months and in which combinations they are using the leave. And the benefit level is different. The benefit level in these cases is basically the minimum benefit, around 500 euros per month at the moment. And we have two different types, which basically differ because of the different eligibility criteria. And one is basically for unemployed farmers and a parent employed on different employment basis. These are basically individual contractors. They are working but on individual contracts, and they are paying social contribution, but somehow they are not in the group of self-employed people. So that's a bit problematic. But they have to have health insurance status in Croatia, which is not difficult to obtain. They had to be registered with the unemployment office, but they have to have 3 years of continuous residency in the country, which is the most tricky part. And especially for foreign citizens, which also have to be granted long-term residence or permanent stay. As we all know, long-term residence is granted sometimes after 5 years in a country because the EU directive allows that. So it can be tricky to get this status. And then the parents outside the labor system, everything is the same. These are people who are retired, they don't have the capacity to work or are studying. They also have to health insurance status, but they have to have 5 years continuous residency period, which is even more tricky than 3 years in the previous case. And if I look back, what has been happening in the recent years, I mean, even in the last 30 years, I can say the Croatian leave policies have been constantly under the reforms, and we have been constantly changing stuff. And in most of the cases, this has been to improve the system, to bring better leave rights. And in the last 5 years, the main focus has been on parental leave benefit level, because previously we have really small ceiling on parental leave benefits. Before that, we have had even a flat rate parental leave benefit for some period, and this was really a small amount of money, and that has now increased significantly, as you can see here, since in 2000, I think before 2017. It has been 350 euros per month. The upper ceiling now is 3,000 euros, which makes a big improvement in the last 7 years, I think, yes. And when it comes to citizenship-based benefit, this one has also been growing, but not that much now. I mean, it grew. The amount now it's much bigger than it was previously, but it is 500 euros. It is still less than minimum salary in the country, so it's not reaching the minimum salary. And then also one of the biggest changes in the last 5 years has been also paternity leave. Croatia didn't have paternity leave. We introduced paternity leave in 2022 because we had to align with the EU directive. And first it was 10 days, 10 working days, and 15 in the case of multiple births. And now in 2025 it was again extended. This was internally extended. It was not conditioned or whatever. So now it is 20 working days, 30 in the case of the multiple births. And also what has changed recently are eligibility criteria for employment-based entitlements. Previously, it was 9 months of continuous employment or 12 with an interruption within 24 months. But now it's 6 months actually of continuous employment. One of the reasons why, especially in 22, change happened is because the directive asked different entitlement basis for paternity leave, so they didn't want to have it different for paternity leave and maternity leave, so they aligned everything to be the same across all the types of the leaves. And if we look into who is eligible, who is not, Croatia has, as I already said, a mixed team. So basically we are combining employment-based entitlements with citizenship-based entitlements. In other words, system is relatively inclusive, and most of the people can have some right to either maternity or parental leave, but there are some issues with current legislation. For example, one of the main problems at the moment is still the fact that persons who are granted international and subsidiary protection and asylum seekers, they have right to citizenship, to employment-based rights. If they are in the labor market and if they have the right to work, they can gain the right to work. For asylum seekers, for example, the waiting period is 3 months, and then they can enter the labor market. However, they are not entitled to citizenship-based entitlements. So this is one of the problems we have. Then the fact also, which is tricky, is newly arrived migrants. If they are in the labor market, everything is fine. They will be entitled. But if they are for some reason out of the labor market, they wouldn't be probably eligible because they will not be able to meet this criteria of 3 to 5 years of continuous residence in the country. Then when it comes to parents in non-standard or precarious employment, I mean, they're all eligible, and Croatian legislation is quite okay when it comes to different types of contracts, like platform workers, or we don't even have 0 hours contracts and this kind of stuff. So the legislation is quite fine here. But the thing is that I mentioned already before, we have these individual contractors who are left out of the employment-based system, so they fit into the citizenship-based system. So, which means that basically, no matter how many contributions they have paid, they are entitled only to the minimum benefit. And the other thing is also that if you don't have this continuous period of insurance, you may not reach the full benefit level. You will be entitled to lower amounts. Same-sex parents are eligible, but only if they have managed to get a partner guardianship status, which means they have to go to court to get this stuff, and sometimes this doesn't happen on time, etc. So this is a bit tricky. And for example, blended or multi-parent families, they are not recognized. So we don't recognize this to manage leave policies in a bit different way. So these are the trickiest questions when it comes to eligibility criteria. When it comes to take-up rates, unfortunately, we don't have good data, so we don't know much, and we don't have like, I mean, it's not even possible to see the registered data. So we don't have that good data like Nordic countries, etc. So we don't know much about that. We have only statistics about the number of parents in a year who has been on leave, and then we can see how many men and women there were, but that's all. So we don't even know the number of days or whatever. So we don't know much. And if you look at the data which are here, you can see that when it comes to, for example, paternity leave, this is new, right? And in the 2024, it was around 60,000 of fathers. And in that year, we have around 32,000 of births, which would maybe mean that around half of the fathers have used their entitlement in that year. But it's really not very precise statistic. It is because it may be these are different fathers from the other year, etc. So it's, yeah, we cannot say much. And when it comes to parental leave, although at the moment father's quota is it's relatively well paid because the ceiling has grew. They're really not. Yeah, we will see. It's hard to tell. This is still with previous legislation. I think it was lower. We will see what will happen this year, next year. But historically, it is around 4% of all leave users in a year. So fathers are not really using parental leave, although we have quota system, I think, since 2013, but it was not well paid leave previously. And here we are coming basically to gender equality elements more deeply, and these elements have been mostly incorporated in leave policy design due to EU conditionality. So these reforms were not internally driven, although experts have been asking for quotas for paternity leave. It never happened. It happened only under the EU conditionality. So this is how these changes actually came into the legislation. And as I said, we had low ceiling on parental leave until 25. So it is really still not clear what the effect of growth is going to be and whether fathers are going to use parental leave more. We have some smaller, earlier studies on the experience of fathers on leave. For example, Mirna Varga, she was doing interviews with fathers, and what she could see, the time when the benefit was still low, is that basically fathers have been telling that a low ceiling is an obstacle for their leave use. Also, they were complaining about situation at work, that when they would announce the leave, employers wouldn't be happy with their decision to use leave. They would have difficulties in agreeing on the leave use with the employer. They would also discourage fathers to take the leave, and the fathers would complain about stigma, but not only at their workplace, but also in the society, because it was it was still a strong narrative that mothers are those who should stay on leave. And finally, okay, here. So basically, I try to sum up things now. What I can say is that if we speak about inequalities, the Croatian scheme is relatively, especially if you look from the comparative perspective, it is quite inclusive, but we still have some exclusions, as I said, with newly arrived migrants, persons granted international and subsidiarity protection, asylum seekers. Then some other families like blended multi-parent families are not even recognized. So there are some issues with current legislation. Gender equality elements are incorporated in leave policy design, but still most of the leave is still on mothers. So the quota system is only 2 months, and if we look that into the context of 40 months of leave, it's smaller part of the leave. The administrative data are weak. We also struggle with access, so we don't know much about effects, but we have smaller qualitative studies about, for example, experience on fathers, I mentioned before, but we also have on experience of non-standard workers, where we can see that they are eligible, but the question is basically how they use the leave. And what we found out from those studies is that many of them are taking entitlements and taking benefits, but they are constantly working because the benefit level, especially for individual contractors, is very, very small. So they cannot afford not to work for one year. And also what is problematic point in Croatian system is actually weak alignment with early childhood education and care. In the recent 5 years, the number of facilities is growing and it's really expanding rapidly. But the thing is, there is no legal entitlement to ECC, so we have this gap. And basically, the first time when we know that children will be entitled to something is primary school, and the primary school starts at the year of 6 or 7. So it's big gap. But on the other hand, I must say that we are building many new facilities, and this is not really going to be practical problem. Maybe in 2 years period, we will be quite okay, and all children basically will be able to go to early childhood education and care. So thank you. I will stop here and open to questions.